Making this call on behalf of City to City Europe, and it's our vision to see a movement of the gospel in the cities of Europe. And to that end, during this time, City to City Europe believes that it doesn't want to replace the local church or that it could replace the local church, but it wants to support local churches and leaders. One question that many people have right now has to do with our favorite topic at City to City, which is the gospel. Our topic today is a centered approach to a crisis. So some people are going crazy, and some people are, viewing this as an extra vacation on the other side. So, what does the gospel tell us? That's really the big question. So, I'm here with Neil Powell, pastor of Second City Church in Birmingham, UK, and author, along with John James, of Together for the City: How Collaborative Church Planning Leads to Citywide Movements. And also, I'm here with Giotis Kantartzis, pastor of the First Evangelical Church in Athens, Greece. So it's great to have you both today.
Great to be with you.
So, Giotis, I'll start with you. You're no stranger to a crisis. For the past few years, refugees have been pouring into the city of Athens. And what lessons have you learned as a pastor, as a leader, and as a leader of a network of churches on how to respond to a crisis?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, even before the refugee crisis, we had a financial crisis. So it's been like one after the other. And actually, I'm mentioning that I was reading an article by David Brooks recently, and there is a point that he makes, which I think is very profound, and that is that not all crises are the same and produce the same kind of results. There are some that bring people together, like the refugee crisis brought the best out of us in a real way here in Greece. I mean, people really responded well, and we felt that, we need to come together, or like an earthquake or a physical disaster typically brings people together. Now, interestingly enough, with the coronavirus, we are dealing with that kind of a crisis that brings people apart. Social distancing is, in a way, kind of a virtue, something which is desired. Now, I mean, the thing that though is really important, and that comes out of our experiences, is that, which is very cliche, that crisis really gives us opportunities, and they certainly do give us many opportunities. So if there is a lesson, is that the crisis presents us with something that we haven't faced before, and that brings with it a new set of opportunities to rethink, use different approaches to things. So that would be my answer to that, my response to that.
That's a great response, and it's great to know that we have people that, even if it's not the same crisis, but that we have people who've gone through crises before. Neil, over the past years, you've put a lot of thought into what it means to be gospel-centered and how it directly applies to your city and other cities. Our cities are faced with really new challenges, like Giotis mentioned. We have people rushing in grocery stores. We also have other people that say, no big deal. What can a gospel-centered approach teach us right now about the current outlook?
Thank you, Kelly. My instinct is that, again, one reflection on this issue of what does a crisis reveal? And I think one of the things it reveals is sort of the base instinct of human nature. And it has a way of exposing the inner desires of the human heart. And I think, just as we see in the UK, quite a lot of selfishness, I think, at a time like this, as people are going into the stores and just panic buying and taking everything for themselves. I think it's a gospel opportunity right now for Christians to reveal how the gospel changes a human heart to be from selfish to selfless, and how we as Christians can, instead of choosing to sort of prefer our own interests, as a result of meditating on Christ, and as an overflow of our love for Christ, we can instead choose to love God and to love our neighbor. And that, at a time of crisis, can't be taught. I think it comes out of what is already there. So Paul Tripp talks a little bit about how if you take the lid off a bottle and you shake the bottle, what comes out of the bottle is what's been inside it all along. You've just taken the lid off. And I guess this is the opportunity for the church when it's shaken. You take the lid off and you shake it and you say, what comes out of the church? Is it selfishness in a different form, a concern only for ourselves, or is it actually a desire to love God by loving our neighbor? So I think here is an opportunity to show the marked contrast of the gospel, because human nature is transformed by the gospel. We have new natures. And if we can be radical in our devotion to Christ by loving and serving our neighbor, I think it's at a time like this when the church can really be noticed and be seen to be different in a very marked way.
And we think about shaking that bottle and what comes out. Giotis, you've learned probably different lessons from these previous crises that you mentioned. How have they helped you to approach this, and maybe how have you applied the gospel to people in your church and your community during this time?
Yeah, I would continue from where Neil left off. Definitely, contexts like that gives us the opportunity to show how the gospel makes us differ. So, for example, with the refugee crisis, a lot of people and many entities were providing some care to the refugees. But even the way you do that reveal, if you're gospel centered or not. So, for example, do you offer mercy with humility, not like from I have something that you need and I'm giving that to you? Do we give mercy without expecting anything back? Many times people they give things to others with the expectation now that they will listen to us and will share the gospel and plant the church. And I mean, so the gospel should not only be the motivation to do mercy in contexts like that, but also it should shape the way we do and we offer mercy. Now, there is another aspect to that, which is kind of taking going in a different direction, and that is this. I think something that we all have to learn through this crisis, and the church needs to learn that, is to slow down. The idea of distance, and of course, it can have these two different meanings, space, being away, but also it has to do with time. And that has to do with waiting. And it's very interesting that, like in the Christian East and West, we celebrate Lent right now, which Lent is supposed to be a different way of counting time, or like a preparation, waiting for something. And of course, it's interesting that what we're waiting during Lent is the event of resurrection. So I think that there is a lesson for us as a church. I know our impulse, and my impulse, is to be an activist and see how can I go out there and help. But perhaps there is also this lesson for us to slow down, reflect, instead of pursuing what is fast results, to perhaps learn the art of prayer, of silence, of waiting, and try to see how we can fill with meaning that time again. A more contemplative thing.
That's really helpful. I think from our different cultures in Europe, definitely probably Southern Europe is even stronger in kind of taking time and getting away, that kind of thing. And so we can kind of learn from one another during this as well, and really have those times of reflection. Neil, sort of our last question. What do pastors and leaders need to be telling their people at a moment like this?
Thanks, Kelly. That's a very big question. I'm not sure I can answer it fully, but let me tell you one or two things that, as I've talked to members of our own congregation, they said have helped them think a little bit. I think, firstly, to understand it, it's no bad thing to accept that we're not in control of our lives. That actually, that can be quite a good thing. It's a very scary thing, but it's not a bad thing to be humbled. And I think we in the West are used to just being in total control of our destiny. Of course, that's an illusion. We like to think that, and actually, maybe God is humbling us, as we're told in 1 Peter chapter 5. But it's not just the case that we're not in control. I guess the flip side of that is to therefore start to panic and think maybe no one's in control, and to fear that the world is now running out of into chaos. And even Christians can be prone to worrying that they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and therefore, because they don't know, no one knows. And I guess a centered theology sits between thinking I'm in control and thinking no one's in control, and that centeredness of the gospel reminds me that God is in control. And that has to be enough for me at a time in a season like this. So again, some of the practices that Giotis has mentioned of just quiet reflection and prayer and waiting on the Lord is itself a manifestation of acceptance on our part. I'm not in control, but nor is it the case that no one's in control. The centered position is God is the one who has the world in his hands. And in one sense, God is as much in control today as he was 3 months ago, when I thought I was in control and I never was. So it's a hard lesson, but maybe God has humbled us for a time. Then in due time, as we read in 1 Peter chapter 5, in due time, he will lift us up.
Good word. Thank you so much, both of you, Neil and Giotis, for taking the time today.
Thank you.